I am Davis Houck. I teach in the School of Communication at Florida State University. I've been doing this now for 17 years. And my particular research expertise is the history of the civil rights movement, but I'm also interested to figure out how the civil rights movement actually moved. One of the places where the movement really moved was in Mississippi, and specifically the Mississippi Delta. And so what I did a couple weeks ago was take 11 of my students to the Delta because it's called the most southern place on earth. And in order to appreciate the most southern place on earth, you need to see it. We went 4 nights, 5 days. We rented a van, so I kind of wanted to do this communally. So we road tripped big. First stop was Jackson, state capital, where we had lined up 2 talks from 2 movement veterans. We're doing the movie script. The film that we're doing, the main action takes place in this little community called Drew. And a black sharecropper by the name of Joe Pullum was lynched there in December of 1923. In the process of him being lynched, he shot and killed 4 white men and wounded 15 others. And so it was a big thing in Drew, Mississippi, that a black sharecropper fought back. And so we've spent a ton of time researching what little we can about Joe Pullum.
So from basically January to February, we were just digging into the internet and then other archives to see whatever we could find.
We've really done a lot of groundwork trying to figure out as much as we could about the actual story itself. So census records and looking through old newspapers on microfilm and digging up everything we could about, because it's not a very well-known story. What is life like in Mississippi in 1923? What are the day-to-day actions on a plantation? We know it's not the best living conditions, but how are things actually operating? How do things look? How are we going to put that on screen so to be as true to that as we can, historically accurate as we can?
So Money, Mississippi, right, is this tiny, tiny little place that time has largely forgotten. And it's a sad place, I mean, because everybody's left. But there are a couple of plantations that are still there and still active. And we got on one of those plantations. Looks like somebody held a freeze frame from 1955.
It's one of the places, it's the kind of thing where you really can't understand it until you go.
Because the shacks were still there. And the woman who was a part owner of the plantation was kind enough to say, come over, go anywhere you want. So we did. And so the students totally got into it because we'd read about plantation life. This was your world, right? If you were a black Mississippian, the plantation was as far as you went oftentimes. And so for them to see that, very powerful. And, you know, the shacks were falling down, but you could still kind of go in them. And, you know, people had left letters, so they found some letters and they found some newspapers. And the other thing my students noticed that I noticed too on this trip was the incredible silence of the Delta.
There was like a distinct moment where you cross into the Delta part of Mississippi, and it is a very different landscape. It's a very different place, and it's just really eye-opening. It really makes a lot of the stuff we read about come together.
It's a completely different place than any place I've ever seen in the U.S. You don't really think that you're still in our own country when you're there. You go, and it's almost like you've traveled back in time.
It was just very exciting to see the Delta and to see just the vastness of the space and the area. It's an experience to see how they lived and to just witness it all.
A lot of it was Emmett Till themed because all of these students the previous semester had written about the Emmett Till case. And so they knew about Moses Wright and where he lived, and they knew about the whistle at the store in Money, Mississippi, and they knew where Emmett was murdered on this private residence in Drew, Mississippi. And so it was powerful.
Just seeing things that we've read about and things that we've researched, it's kind of cool that we can go back and kind of see what they saw with their own eyes.
We got to meet a lot of pioneers and learn about the civil rights movement in Mississippi and how dangerous it was and kind of get a feel of the environment.
It's been a really interesting experience with everyone. We've bonded as a class more than I ever would have thought possible.
We just had a really interesting and good time there learning about all this.
It was a very unique, great experience. Glad we were able to do it.
Kind of life-changing to go there and see all the stuff we've been learning about, meet people who we've written papers on. It's definitely a lot more intense seeing it with your own eyes.